Wednesday, July 8th, Roundtable Talk welcomes Prime Minister Dr. Ralph E. Gonsalves, current chair of the Caribbean Community CARICOM and the chairman of LIAT Shareholder Governments, to talk about the soon-to-be liquidated LIAT and regional air travel. Get the facts straight from the horse's mouth. Your host is Theresa Daniel. It's all the talk on this Wednesday's edition of Roundtable Talk with Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves. Join the talk on Facebook, YouTube, and Channel 114.
On Friday, July 10th,
there'll be thousands of dollars to be won. A lotto jackpot of
$69,000.
a new home, car, or that college education.
Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Next lotto jackpot,
$69,000.
Good evening and welcome to this evening's edition of Roundtable Talk. We are pleased to welcome our special guest, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves. Welcome to Roundtable. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much.
So happy that you can take time off your busy schedule. I mean, today was cabinet, and I know today must have been one of those days.
Yes. I'm very happy to be here, Theresa.
Well, you know, all the talk is LIAT, regional air transportation. You are embroiled as chairman of CARICOM, also as chair of the shareholder governments. Tell us, what were the circumstances, or what have been the circumstances that have led to this imminent demise of LIAT? Was COVID the final straw?
Yes, and the immediate trigger, in a formal sense, was a meeting of the board of directors, chaired by the chairman, former Prime Minister of Barbados, Professor Owen Arthur. They met on the 23rd of June. And they received an analysis of the financial condition of LIAT. From that analysis, from that presentation, the board of directors concluded that LIAT couldn't pay its debts, that it was in a bad shape financially, and that it should be wound up. Accordingly, they made a recommendation in the form of a resolution to the shareholders for the winding up. Now, I'm the chair of the shareholders. If I receive such a resolution from the board of directors, I'm duty bound to act. So I summoned a meeting of the four major shareholders: the governments of Barbados, Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. These four shareholders hold 92% of the shares of LIAT. LIAT has 12 shareholders. They're very small shareholders otherwise. Governments, unions, and the like. There were four items on the agenda for the meeting of the shareholders, of the major shareholders, which I summoned on the 27th of June. The four items on the agenda were: one, the critical financial condition of LIAT; Secondly, the recommendations from the board of directors. Thirdly, the issue of winding up or liquidation. And fourthly, the matter of summoning and meeting of the ordinary shareholders and creditors under the laws of Antigua and Barbuda, the country in which LIAT 1974 Limited was incorporated, and for that meeting of ordinary shareholders and creditors to consider the winding up liquidation recommendation from the board of directors as accepted unanimously by the 4 major shareholders at this meeting on the 27th. So the agenda with those 4 items was unanimously approved. And the decision to liquidate was also unanimously approved by the 4 major shareholders, the 4 shareholder governments I just mentioned. I hear the talk to the contrary. I'm just giving you what are the unvarnished facts. At that meeting, as the chair of the shareholders, I was asked to write a letter to all the staff outlining the circumstances broadly that led us to this particular pass and the decision of the major shareholders, and giving certain recognition to the staff. And I have that document, I can read it if necessary and desirable. The second thing is that it was decided at that the meeting of the major shareholders that the government of Barbados, the major shareholder, would prepare a list of either 1 or more than 1 companies to be liquidators with the proposed terms and conditions for the liquidator to function. There were a couple ancillary matters, like, for instance, the ordinary meeting of shareholders and creditors under the bylaws of the company will normally take place in situ, at one place in Antigua and Barbuda. At the time of COVID, the bylaws would have to be amended to have the meeting summoned by Zoom. All of these things were unanimously agreed upon. Subsequently, of course, an issue has arisen about where the government of Antigua is saying, well, do we have to go to liquidation? Is there not another possible option? And in fact, I have received a letter, and I've received 2 letters from my brother, the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Gaston Brown. The first one, which was sent to the other 3 major shareholders, dated July the 2nd. It was a long letter which I've responded to very calmly and soberly. And then I received a letter on Monday, on the 6th, where there's a request by him to the other major shareholders to have a meeting either on Monday the 13th or some other time next week for him to make a presentation of another alternative way forward for LIAT. I've spoken to Prime Minister Motley last night on this particular proposal, for the meeting that is, and I haven't gotten on to Prime Minister Skerritt yet. I hope to do so tomorrow. But the immediate backdrop to all this really, you can say, crystallized from 2017. There were historic losses of LIAT, and they could have been managed more or less by putting in this or that sum of money to keep this regional carrier going, which did tremendous work.
And which you have been doing. I mean,
Yes,
you have taken a lot of licks for injecting
absolutely.
monies into
And I can
carrier.
talk about that too, and what we have done. But in 2017, LIAT lost about $45 million. The entire network was disrupted because of 2 Category 5 hurricanes and other storms. That disruption carried over into 2018, where we lost about $30 million. Eastern Caribbean dollars, I'm using that currency. And then in 2019, there was a recovery of sorts. We lost $14 million. And then by the end of May this year, at the time of COVID, the losses had been racked up to $35 million. So when I gathered everybody at the shareholders meeting, the major shareholders meeting on the 27th of June by Zoom, and Mia Motley said, Barbados has no more money to put in. I saw then the imminent demise of LIAT, because the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Prime Minister of Dominica, and the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines did not say that they had the money to put in to stem the losses, step up to the plate, to do anything to rescue LIAT. So the only question really staring us, are you going to have an orderly liquidation, or you're going to have a disorderly liquidation? And anybody in business will tell you that it is always preferable to have an orderly liquidation as distinct from a disorderly one. And clearly, with the 600 plus employees, it is important, and we owe them, and we owe the other creditors, a disorderly liquidation. We owe them that. Now, there are many factors which would have made LIAT a problematic investment using the normal business criteria. Look, the challenges include the following. The market for the region is small and fractured. LIAT, even when in its later years, later 2019, sought to cut out many of the unprofitable social routes, it still had unprofitable social routes, where they did it because, A, for the network purposes, the connectivity, but also to aid regional integration and the air transport in the community. The problem was no other government, other than those major shareholders, was prepared to put in any money as equity or as market support. And other governments had been putting in market support for other airlines, American Airlines, British Airways, Virgin, and so on and so forth. So that's the second problem. So a small number of countries bearing the burden. Then there are a number of legacy issues in management and labor, which lead to uneven productivity. There was overstaffing, though we did reforms to cut down the number of staff members. Escalating costs, one kind or another. Sometimes it might be fuel, other times is a cost related to climate change issues. We did a big refleeting with the assistance of the Caribbean Development Bank. The management didn't carry out the refleeting in the most efficacious of ways. And then there are the weaknesses in the economy, in the regional economy. In fact, that is what prompted the Prime Minister of Barbados to say, listen to me, guys, I can't put any more money in this thing. And Barbados has been carrying a lot of weight in the recent years. He said, look, I'm on a tough IMF program, the Prime Minister of Barbados said. I can't do it, I just can't do it.
And there's nobody to pick up the slack.
That's the point.
We'll talk about some more after we come back from our first break.
Channel 114. BEACHE. Channel 114.
On Friday, July 10th,
There'll be thousands of dollars to be won. A lotto jackpot of
$69,000.
a new home, car, or that college education.
Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Next lotto jackpot,
$69,000.
Welcome back. Prime Minister, just before we took that first break, you were talking about the fact that the Prime Minister of Barbados indicated that there was no way she could continue to invest in the company. I want you to respond to the comments that you and the Barbadian Prime Minister seem hell-bent on letting LEAT just go. I mean, I know that you have been one of the governments continuously investing in LEAT, and now that the situation has changed, all of a sudden there's a different tune. I really want to hear how you feel about that.
As a young man on the block will say, that's a bum rap. You know, that doesn't have any real truth, no resonance of credibility to that particular charge. If I give a little chronology, and I will answer you, because many other things may emerge out of that. When I came to office in 2001, you know, Caribbean Star was in the sky with a gentleman known as Alan Stanford. I believe that he's somewhere in a state in the deep south of those United States in an orange uniform in some institution of some kind. He had Caribbean Star and Caribbean Sun, involved in the mimicking of LIAT schedule and also engaged in predatory pricing, contrary to the Multilateral Air Services Agreement 1996-1997 in CARICOM. LIAT was under real pressure. A lot of governments across the region and opposition parties had embraced Stanford and were giving in to his blandishments. You know how sometimes we are in this region. A big Texan come on and you fall over and he says he has a few dollars and he put 2 planes in the skies and all of a sudden your own is of no importance. LIAT issued in 2001 a rights issue to raise $40 million. The only government which bought shares was the government of St. Vincent and Grenadines, my government, $2.9 million. Paid that money either in December 2001 or early January, thereabouts 2002. No private sector entity put any money in, despite all the yap that they want to put money and they want to do this. None of that happened. I led the resistance to Stanford, supported by Owen Arthur, inside of the cabinet of Lester Bird in Antigua and Barbuda. Robin Yearwood, the Minister of Aviation, was a stalwart ally of mine, because he was the man who was coming to the shareholder meetings during that period. Then, after the Antigua Labour Party lost the election, Baldwin Spencer was also a champion. We came to the point where we have to refleet the aircraft because the other aircraft were aging, 15 years, 20 years old. The Dash 8s, the Havilland aircraft, a lot of money spent on maintenance and the like. A big study was done, inside-out analysis by the experts, said buy ATRs. 68-seaters, 50-seaters. We did so. $65 million was borrowed in this regard from the Caribbean Development Bank. We used to put in, over the years before that, more or less equal sums of money. But when we arrived at that point, I said to Baldwin and Spencer and Owen Arthur, I said, listen, this is a huge investment now. Barbados and Antigua are the major beneficiaries. We are beneficiaries too, but in terms of the service we get in. But you're the major beneficiaries. So at this point, I said, we must apply a proposition which I borrowed from the Greek philosopher Aristotle. Equity among equals, proportionality among unequals. As a result of that, Owen Arthur took up 30-something million US. I think Antigua was 20, 21, and we took up 5 little bits and pieces otherwise. That is when Barbados became the major shareholder by a significant degree because of the money they put in at the time of the refleeting. Antigua second, we third, and then a little later, Dominica was persuaded to join. I persuaded my brother Roosevelt Skerritt to come into the picture. And of course, latterly, about a year or so ago, Keith Mitchell from Grenada put in $1 million to provide market support. You know, even when Kamla was Prime Minister in Trinidad and Tobago, and Kamla, they were subsidizing CAL with fuel subsidy, which was an a legally impermissible subsidy under the Multilateral Air Services Agreement, and which was providing unfair competition to LEAT. I talked to the Trinidad government till I blew in the face, they wouldn't listen. You would remember me leading the charge also that across the Caribbean. Then I persuaded the other shareholders for me to get an opinion, a legal opinion. I got a distinguished lawyer in Trinidad and Tobago to do the opinion in conjunction with a professor at University of West Indies, law faculty. I went on a Saturday morning, went through the opinion with them. I sent it to Kamala. I said, I'm giving you one last chance. Otherwise, I'm going to the CCJ, the Caribbean Court of Justice, on this. She said, okay, we'll deal with it. A couple of weeks later, Larry Hawaii, her Minister of Finance, announced in the budget that they're discontinuing the fuel subsidy, and whatever money they're going to put in CAL, they put it up front as equity in the airline, which would have been permissible in the circumstances under the MASA, under the Multilateral Air Services Agreement. Look, for nearly 20 years, I have soldiered doing this work for LEAT. Ralph want to undermine LEAT. I come face to face with the arithmetic. If somebody else had come by and said they could finance, put in the money. But when Mia said, look, I don't have any more money to put. And I'm leaving Mia to say how much money she put over the last couple of years. She put a phenomenal amount of money. And before that, Owen Arthur and Frondell Stewart and David Thompson, all very strongly supportive of LEAT. It is true that Barbados had benefits. But the country is under an IMF program, a tough IMF program. And there are further difficulties now with COVID. And it's difficult for them, it's difficult for Antigua. Tourism economy is ours, it's very difficult for us and for Dominica. But it is a crippling thing for Antigua and real horrors for Barbados, the circumstances of COVID, horrors in an economic sense.
Do you see this affecting CARICOM integration?
No. I don't see it affecting CARICOM integration. Look, I hear some people who trying to make that sound in some places. You take Antigua and Barbuda. In the early period of COVID, they didn't have the PCR tests. Just like us. Mm-hmm. Who provided the support? CAFA is a Caribbean institution, the Caribbean Public Health Agency located in Trinidad. There was no planes going. Which aircraft took the samples down? One of the C-26 aircraft from the Regional Security System, which is a regional institution between Barbados and the other 6 independent territories of the OECS. They're the ones who took the samples down. Look, Gaston is my friend. He's my good friend. I like him very much. When there were some people last year within the region doing a pushback against the campus, which Gaston wanted to have in Antigua and Barbuda, Gaston called me, he said, Comrade Ralph, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to go down to Trinidad for me. My Minister of Education is going to be there, but I want you to lend your weight for the campus in Antigua. I went down and I lent my weight. My voice was very influential at the University Council. I don't have to tell you who are against it, because that's what happened inside these gatherings. The council decided, look, Antigua and Barbuda is 20-something%, more than 1/4 of the economy of the OECS, of the currency union, sorry. They're in a difficult situation now, but they have a good tourism infrastructure. And once this terrible COVID period is over, they'll bounce back up, and bounce back up sharply. St. Vincent may not go down in the hole as deep, but Antigua, as we saw from the last crisis, the last problem which we had with the global economic meltdown between 2008 and 2011, they bounced back more sharply than we did because of the nature of the infrastructure they have for tourism. We don't go down as deep, but when we come out slower. Look, anybody who is a serious analyst would see these things, and I'm there in the corner supporting Antigua and Barbuda. Every country in the Caribbean, I provide supports for, because I am a regionalist. Because we can't survive other than through regionalism. Whatever people say, CARICOM has been a force for good. It hasn't done as much as some people would have expected CARICOM to accomplish, but they've accomplished a great deal, and we just have to keep at it, because it is not easy integrating islands. Islands are peculiar entities, you know. When you're in an island, you feel like you're the world. So there's always this inward gaze. But when you look out and you see the seawater, there has to be an outward look. So there's this tension between the inward gaze and the outward look, always. And you just have to manage that in a mature way as you go forward.
We'll get over it.
We're going to be all right.
When we come back, we want to talk about the workers. Hundreds of them will be affected. We want to talk a little bit about what happens and develop on some of the points, because I know you don't want to look back. You want to look at the way forward. We'll talk about that as well when we come back.
One scratch card, 3 games, 16 chances to win. With a top prize of $125,000. Unbelievable but true. It's the new $10 scratch game. $125,000 jackpots, loaded with lots of cash prizes. $100, $1,000, $10,000, and $125,000. Get your ticket from any lotto agent or scratch runner. $125,000 jackpots. There's cash to catch with just a scratch. On Friday, July 10th,
There'll be thousands of dollars to be won. A lotto jackpot of
$69,000.
a new home, car, or that college education.
Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Next lotto jackpot.
$69,000.
Welcome back, Prime Minister. During the last break, we wanted to talk a little bit about the question of what happens to the hundreds of employees, LEAT employees, who will in fact most likely be without an income, without their jobs.
It's a painful thing. It's a very painful thing. Overall, there's 636 employees. The calculation for the severance pay based on the collective agreements is about $84 million Eastern Caribbean. Then the airline owes about $10 million for holidays to the workers. So that's $94 million. Then up to today, well, for July, if you include July, they would owe $7.2 million for payments which they have made to workers whom they kept on because they laid off 500 plus and kept on 100 and something. Mm-hmm. So there are a number of those workers who haven't been paid either. Haven't been paid full salary. So that all of that is there before us. In St. Vincent, there are 41 workers. The severance pay calculated in relation to the collective agreement. Notice I stress that because I think when you go to liquidation, there's some different considerations. And they owe about $400,000 owed for holidays. So you're talking about 1.9, call it $2 million. But that's not all. By the month of May, LEAT would have collected about $11 million EC from people who book passages.
What's going to happen to that?
But that's the point. That's the point. And then there are other pre-liquidation costs. And their liquidation costs. The liquidator is not coming in for nothing. So all of these things are there. Plus money is owed to suppliers, to the companies that lease the aircraft, the people who supply other goods and services to LEAT, the commercial bank, which LEAT does business with. Then governments are owed a lot of money. All the governments, including St. Vincent and Grenadines. The money which is supposed to, the departure tax, some of that is collected and not passed over.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There are other payments which are outstanding. POI payments. You know, so it's a lot of money. I have made this point. It is well nigh impossible for me to see that the democratic state in the Caribbean would behave like a bandit and not apply right reason, reasonableness in all the circumstances, including, of course, the circumstances where we have to make sure that the taxpayers are not unduly burdened. I'm being very careful with my language here. What will come out of the wash in the liquidation is almost predictable, given what the evidence presented by the board of directors. There's not a lot of money. LEAT doesn't have assets to hold to make these kinds of payments. In the case, What do you do? Does every government where the workers work in take responsibility for part or whole of that?
Will they?
Well, a couple of governments said they will give that consideration. But the numbers are highly skewed. In the case of Antigua and Barbuda, you're talking between the severance payment and what is owed in relation to holidays. You're talking a number around $70 million. In Barbados, it's more like 17 million. Because Antigua has 372 workers. Not all of them, of course, are Antiguans. Now, some people are introduced the idea, should people take care of their nationals wherever they are? But the point is this, those are moral and social considerations. Would you, if there's a pilot who lives in Antigua, works in Antigua,
And he's Vincentian.
he pays all his bills, he buys everything there.
In Antigua.
He does everything. St. Vincent and Grenadines gets no benefit from his own employment income, no taxes, no VAT, nothing at all. Can you take care of him and not take care of somebody up in Lauders or South Rivers or Richmond or Campbell in Union Island who takes $600, a fellow who sells his cattle and takes $600-700 to buy a ticket to go and see his daughter or son in Tortola but couldn't go? How are you going to, what judgments you're making in relation to these things? Because you're out of the liquidation process, the legal process. You now have to apply moral and social considerations to what you can do. And what you can do will depend on what is the state of the coffers, what is the fiscal situation.
There's really no easy answer.
It's a complicated issue. And that is why you see, you can rely on the government of St. Vincent and Grenadines not to act as a bandit. But I have to frame what I'm saying to you, Teresa, within the context of reasonableness and consideration for the taxpayers of the country. And how do you balance a series of things? It is a difficult question to apply your mind to. But you have to apply your mind to it and apply your heart to wisdom to come to some conclusions.
Before we talk about what people want to really hear about, how are we going to
move?
How are we going to move? I mean, we can't sit down and wait.
Well, there are 4 airlines. Immediately. Let's deal with what we have at home. We have One Caribbean. One Caribbean is owned by Vincentians, and an American who is a Vincentian has, I've been advised, a minority shareholding. They have 2 30-seater SAB and a 19-seater. They're now getting I've seen the documentation where they have gone to their lessors for another SAB, another 30-seater. They can work between Grenada and up to Dominica and do these short runs, maybe down to even to Trinidad too, when Trinidad opens. SVG Air has 6 twin otters, 4 of which belong to the Mustique Company. I've also spoken to the Mustique Company. They're 19-seaters. They're rarely, those horses are war horses.
Being around.
In the region. They're good planes, 19-seaters. Now,
But some people are afraid of those small planes.
Well, a 19-seater is quite a good plane, a Twin Otter. They're very good for island hopping. In fact, they operate in the Northern Caribbean. SVG Air, Montserrat, Antigua, Montserrat, St. Kitts, Nevis, and the like.
Really woods, okay.
Okay? Now, then there is CAL. Caribbean Airlines has 12 jets and 7 ATR 72s. The 68 70-seaters. They have 2 more which they can get easily. Of course, the ATRs tend to do the Tobago run, Trinidad Tobago run. The CAL has, I've had meetings with SVG Air, I've had meetings with One Caribbean. CAL has been in touch with me. They've sent me, the chairman wrote me a letter, and at the end of it says, we stand ready to have immediate discussions on the provision of regional airlift in this critical period. Ronnie Mohammed. And he sent me the expansion in the Eastern Caribbean. Pre-COVID-19 expansion plans covers 80% of LIAT's network. Well, it may not be 80, it may be 70. And then we have Inter-Caribbean, which is owned by nationals of Turks and Caicos, and that's where it's registered. And One Caribbean, Inter-Caribbean, has a few days ago applied to the director of airports, Andrea Bess, to provide services. This is the application letter. We Inter-Caribbean Airways Limited, a 28-plus-year-old airline registered and based in the UK, overseas territory of the Turks and Caicos Islands, are desirous of providing air services to and from St. Vincent and Grenadines. There are 16 aircraft of different types. They want to do common services between Tortola and St. Vincent. They want to do Tortola to St. Vincent via Antigua to continue to Trinidad. They want to do St. Vincent Barbados. So those are 4 within the Caribbean. The biggest one, of course, is CAL. And we just have to make sure we get the right mix. Silver Airways, which is out of Miami. They have Saab's ATR 42s and 72s.
And they're US?
They're US. Cape Air. They have made an outreach to me for an inter-Caribbean air service. They said they have 800 employee owners of Cape Air. They say they are the largest commuter airline in the United States, they have a base in Puerto Rico, in San Juan. They have up to 25 aircraft. They're mainly in the northern part of the Caribbean. In short, we can put together a schedule, and we have assets. Now, there may be other private sector people who want to join one or other of these entities. It may be that Gaston's initiative may bear fruit. And what will happen there is what the market and what the investment would say. But as always, I want to ensure that we have a reliable, safe, affordable airline, air transport. I want it to be safe, I want it to be reliable, sustainable, and affordable.
Okay, Prime Minister, we'll come back for the last segment in just a moment.
114. BEACHE. Channel 114.
One scratch card, 3 games, 16 chances to win. Win with a top prize of $125,000. Unbelievable but true. It's the new $10 scratch game. $125,000 jackpots. Loaded with lots of cash prizes. $100, $1,000, $10,000, and $125,000. Get your ticket from any lotto agent or scratch runner. $125,000 jackpots. There's cash to catch with just a scratch. On Friday, July 10th,
There'll be thousands of dollars to be won. A lotto jackpot of
$69,000.
a new home, car, or that college education.
Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Next lotto jackpot,
$69,000.
Welcome back, Prime Minister. Just before we took that final break, you were talking about some of the assets
Yes.
that we have. How soon can we expect some kind of movement? Because, you know, people want to know.
Yes. The one Caribbean has indicated to me, in fact, they indicated to Cabinet today, because I had them come to the Cabinet, that they can move as early as Sunday. They want to do they want to do St. Lucia, Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Vincent.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would watch the market for a few days, then they want maybe 7-10 days, they want to do direct. They want to go in another 3-4 weeks or so when they get their third plane. They want to be able to go from Grenada all the way up to Dominica. And they can do these shorter runs, while Cal may do some longer ones. The SVG Air would be very much interested in doing, they do the Grenadines already, they go down to Grenada, they go for Barbados and St. Lucia, and I say they're up in the Northern Caribbean. What would be a very good thing is for SVG Air and One Caribbean, if they can market themselves as one, even though they fly, they have their own separate operations. I don't know whether Cal is going to be interested in working with them or One Caribbean to have the matter seamless. We'd have to have a discussion on this. Last night I was talking to Prime Minister Motley about precisely this question which you have raised. But look, I cannot fight the future and the requisites of regional air transport. I can't put my head in the sky. I can't plant my feet in the air. I cannot fight the future. I have, where people require something immediately, I have to address with what is at hand. And one thing also I'm not doing, I'm not going to look forward to the past. Because I know if I look forward to the past, in the extant circumstances, that is not sustainable. Of course, somebody may present to me a workable plan with something else, with dedicated, realistic financing. But I haven't seen that. I can't dream that. I have to move Teresa, and I have to move Mabel, Adam, Ephraim, and Olympia. I have to move everybody. I have to move visitors. I have to move nationals. And we have to do it as COVID, as we seek to live well with COVID and all the challenges inherent with that kind of life and living. And that takes us into uncharted waters. But if you lead in, you have to see further and clearer than those whom you're leading. But you can't go so far ahead that you lose them. You have to bring them along with you to see what is happening. We have money in the budget, in the estimates. We have $2.7 million.
Yes, we want to talk about that.
Which is there if we had to put any money in LIAT. Well, there are some costs, some pre-liquidation costs, which you have to meet. And we will provide supports for the airlines here, the development supports which we can give, the possibility even of modest soft loans. We gave the fast ferry from Union Island up $100,000 US soft loan. And we do that because we have to move people from the southern Grenadines to St. Vincent and points in between. It is true that even with that support, they had to go and operate the ferry elsewhere in the Northern Caribbean. And they're making payments, I've been advised. So that there are things which we can do. We don't want to be a shareholder, that is to say the government, in One Caribbean. I don't want to be a shareholder in SVG Air, because SVG Air operates also, well, Grenadines Air operates the 4 twin otters belonging to the Mustique company. I want to see us, and I've spoken to the chief executive officer of the CEO of the Mustique company and outline what we are doing. I've been spending a lot of time on this, Teresa. When a lot of people have been yapping, I bring for you some of the evidence of it in front of the documents, with the documents I have before me. Because I want the people, when they go to sleep tonight, when they watch this streaming, they must say, well, Ralph and the government seem to have a plan. And that is what you have to do. You have to put a little oil in your lamp and you got to keep it burning. You have to plan in order to get this thing done properly. And we had put aside some resources. I remember when we went into Parliament, the people in the opposition said, we're putting money there for air transport and LIAT and all this thing. They say, and you have the Argyle International Airport open from 8 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock. It should be locked down. Because remember, they wanted to lock down. That's on April the 7th, Draconian Chinese methods. Lock it down tight like a drum. You see, when you have your thought processes clear, and when you're thinking, and you're looking to solve problems, internet crazies don't drive me, God give me a brain. God give me a head. I have tried to shape it through reading and study, observation, listening. I've experience.
Prime Minister, do you have any regrets for all the monies that you injected into LEAT?
No. Because LEAT served us well. The point is this. Between the hurricanes and COVID, what is required is just too much for the economies to bear. And what do? Do you put your head in sackcloth and ashes? No. You have an optimism.
You rise again. Mm-hmm.
You have an optimism. Mm-hmm. I am not a man of lamentations. The people elect me to help solve problems as far as is practicable. And morning by morning, new mercies I see. All that I need thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness.
As we get ready to wind down, there's talk of a possible LEAT 2020. Should that come to fruition, what would be our government's interest, support? And
At the moment, the proposal for LEAT 2020 is a concept wrapped up as an enigma and massaged by a lot of polemics. As always, I keep an open mind. I want to see a workable plan. I want to see realistic financing. Remember, I tell you, I will not fight the future and the requisites of efficacious regional air transportation. And at the same time, I am not looking forward to the past.
And I think that's a wonderful note on which to end this evening's edition of Roundtable Talk. Prime Minister, thank you so much for coming,
Thank you very much for having me.
And letting us know what's happening straight from the horse's mouth.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks.
That's it for this week's edition of Roundtable Talk. So glad you could join us. Do join us again next week for another edition of Roundtable Talk. Good evening.
Channel 114. BEACHE. Channel 114.
One scratch card, 3 games, 16 chances to win. Win with a top prize of $125,000. Unbelievable but true. It's the new $10 scratch game. $125,000 jackpot. Loaded with lots of cash prizes, $100, $1,000, $10,000, and $125,000. Get your ticket from any lotto agent or scratch runner.